Hello everybody, I'm KC and welcome to an edition of Let's Talk About, and welcome to the latest installment of To Infinity War and Beyond. With most of our established heroes busy being dust or figuring how to undust the others, let's look to the stars to see what other heroes are out there in Captain Marvel. Veers, played by Brie Larson, is a newly assigned warrior of the Kree Empire attempting to prove herself and stop the enemy race, the Skrull. But when she crashes to Earth after a failed mission, she's confronted with her forgotten past life as Carol Danvers, and with the help of both old and new faces, sets out to figure out who she is. In case you're new to the series, To Infinity War and Beyond are spoiler-filled reviews, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and wanted to be as mysterious as a well-disguised Skrull, you might want to check it out and come back after. We good? Good. Let's address the elephant in the room. This is the first Marvel movie starring a new hero after the events of Infinity War. But not quite. This movie takes place about 20 years ago in the 90s. Not that you can tell or anything. I don't know if there's a term for baiting a certain type of nostalgia, but I know it's something that does bug people, especially when it comes to the 80s and 90s. Thankfully, the 90s that's in this movie is never overpowering or annoyingly right in your face. It provides a couple of jokes and is in the background in conversations enough that feels natural for the time period. So if that's something you were concerned about, don't be. One thing that is referenced a lot is the MCU itself, which you all know is kinda my jam. The most obvious, of course, are the many returning characters. We'd met some of the Kree back in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Ronan even makes a glorified cameo, and somehow leaves more of an impact than he did in Guardians. While what we see of the Kree homeworld isn't as visually well defined as something like Asgard or Nowhere, most of the intrigue with this race comes from the Kree we meet, how they seem to be noble warriors defending their land in the universe, of a species with great pride in its superiority. But we'll talk more about that later, just keep it in the back of your mind for now. On a purely aesthetic level, the makeup effects on the Skrull look spot on. Like with the Red Skull, it looks like they leaped right off the pages of the comics. Plus, being shapeshifters creates some nice tension and gives us the very memorable fight scene between Carol and an old woman. And I don't want to say it's the best action scene in the movie, but it sure is something. And the scenes with Carol using her powers are really freaking cool, especially when she figures out how to fly with them. And I know I've said this before, but I will always praise when they manage to make a comic book costume look cool and not silly in the transition to live action, which they did once again with this very impractical helmet. Well done. And I normally don't bring these things up, but I have to mention the Stan Lee cameo this time around for obvious reasons. Sure, the actual cameo in the movie is great, even if I didn't fully understand the context until I saw Kevin Smith's video on it, but when they did the Marvel Studios intro with all of his cameos in the MCU, that was so moving. I really wish I could show it here, but I can still say it's a lovely tribute. For me, honestly, the movie gets the most appealing when we get to Earth. Almost the exact opposite way I felt the last time I saw the story in the MCU. Hey, like I've said, this many movies in, some things aren't going to be completely original, but I'm surprised I haven't seen more people point this out. But if I'm honest, one thing I was really looking forward to was a certain pair of agents Carol runs into. And can I just say it was so great to see Coulson again? I know he's got a TV show, but I haven't really kept up with it. Honestly, my only major complaint with this movie is that there wasn't enough Coulson. I missed him so much. But even if we don't get enough of Coulson, we get more than enough of a much younger, two-eyed Nick Fury. I don't know if anyone has noticed this, but I haven't really talked much about Nick Fury in the series, despite him having such an influential role in the MCU. My best excuse is that I've never really found a good place to talk about Fury, even if there is quite a bit I could say. And this appearance only gives me more to say, so now that he's a main character, let's correct this. First of all, can we officially give the biggest applause to this de-aging CGI? I know it's become a regular effect in the MCU, but that's usually for brief flashbacks. This is for one of the main characters, who's in frame for at least half the movie, and I never saw through the cracks. Whatever team was in charge of maintaining this, I salute you. Obviously, it's pretty cool to see a young Nick Fury before he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., but for some reason, I didn't realize just how green he'd be. He's much more snarky, less strict, follows protocol, and fawns over a cat. Could you see director Nick Fury stopping in his tracks during an espionage mission to pet a cat? Probably not. But given what Goose did, that's probably understandable.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye. Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you cute?
I think the best example of this is when he kills a Skrull in his car and is so disturbed by it that he covers it with his jacket and shudders out of the car. It's a small moment, but to me it says so much about where we are with Fury. His entire view on reality was changed in minutes, and for a second he has trouble processing it. But he still stands his ground, and as circumstances change, he still does what he always will: defend the defenseless, even from threats they don't even realize are there. Fury has always been more compassionate than his demeanor might have you believe. There's a ton of examples of the fact that despite Fury doing some shady things throughout his time in the MCU, he always tries to find the noble solution, even if it may not be the most conventional. He's a great director because he gets the facts and acts from there, and doesn't let misguided superiority guide his perception. And this movie seems to be the place where he learned that lesson, that you may not know everything about perceived threats from one encounter, but you still have to take the best action you can. Heck, by the end of the movie, he befriends creatures that were part of the same species that attacked him. Like every other MCU hero, Fury is a skilled individual who, through extraordinary circumstances, learned how to use those skills to protect others. And while this has always been true of Nick Fury, it's very eye-opening to see just where that instinct came from, and how it's evolved to create something so much larger. Plus, Samuel L. Jackson has amazing chemistry with Brie Larson. Almost makes this movie feel like a buddy cop flick at points, which I am all for. This movie continues the trend of great supporting casts. Maybe not the most charismatic outside of Fury, but still characters that I remember, really liked, and hope to see again. There's Carol's friend Maria Rambeau, played by Lashana Lynch, Maria's daughter Monica, played by Akira Akbar, who is not only tied with Cassie from my favorite MCU kid, but I really hope she shows up grown up in the present day. Could you imagine if she ended up working for S.H.I.E.L.D. or something? That'd be amazing. And the Skrull leader Talos, played by Ben Mendelsohn, who did a great job portraying someone who could appear villainous but is just trying to defend his people. I'm curious to see how it holds up on a second viewing. They seem to be hinting that he might return, and I really hope that's true. I need more alien Ben Mendelsohn in my life. But it's about time we talk about our newest hero, Carol Danvers. Of course, the most significant thing about Carol is that she is the first Marvel hero with amnesia. A trope I honestly can't believe took us 21 movies to explore, but here we are, and with our main character no less. In terms of personality, Carol is a really well-rounded character. For most of the movie, all she knows is training to be a soldier, to protect the Kree homeworlds, and believing that controlling her powers means inhibiting her emotions. And during missions and fights, she is very no-nonsense, ready to charge into a fight for what she believes in, and will go to almost any means necessary to accomplish her mission. But the miraculous thing is that she's not a stick in the mud. She's no-nonsense and stoic when she needs to be, but she's also well-humored, is kind-hearted and fun-loving towards the one she cares about, and gets across her struggles at her constantly challenged worldview very well. And Brie Larson does a great job portraying a played-down yet spirited individual. Every hero in the MCU so far has faced some sort of search for identity and purpose, but Carol has the biggest identity crisis of them all, being forced to confront her past and how much it changes what she believes she was, but also all of her beliefs she's been taught by the Kree once she hears from the Skrull's point of view. Throughout the movie, the Skrull are portrayed as bloodthirsty conquerors, when in reality, they are a dwindling race, driven off their homeworld by the Kree and have just been trying to survive ever since. I don't know how true this is in terms of an adaptation of the comics. From what I know about the Kree and the Skrull, they've been both the victims and the conquerors, but I could be wrong here. But in terms of this story, it's a great twist on expectations. Not a new one in terms of blockbuster films, I know, but one that at least took me by surprise in this case. Not only is there the trope twist of making a race of shapeshifters, a creature usually used to present fear and mistrust, and having them be well-meaning survivors, but there's also the use of what I consider this movie's theme, and what might become Captain Marvel's defining theme: perception. Now yes, a lot of Marvel movies have had deceptive villains or twists with the story and characters, but nothing in this movie is as it seems. The Kree, the Skrull, Carol, even the cat. The more Goose was featured in the marketing, the more I was suspicious of it, and I won't say what the deal is with the cat here because you need to see it to believe it, but I'll just leave this clip here out of context.
Tentacles. I hate tentacles.
But I think the best way to get across the theme of perception in this movie is to talk about two of the most influential characters for Carol, played by Annette Bening and Jude Law. Okay, 1 second. As I was saying, when the promotion started rolling out for this movie, as soon as fans saw Jude Law, we all thought he was playing Mar-Vell, the character who was responsible for Carol getting her powers. Marvel would not say who he was playing, but we were all so sure he was playing Mar-Vell that it was becoming a running joke.
I thought you were Mar-Vell. You're not Mar-Vell.
I can't tell you who I am.
But you're not Mar-Vell or you are Mar-Vell?
I can't tell you who I am.
But there was a reason Marvel was so tight-lipped about this casting, because Jude Law isn't Mar-Vell. He is just an abrasive Kree commander. You know who was? Annette Bening. If you've gotten really savvy at how Marvel hides twists during their promotional campaigns, or you just saw the IMDb page, you might have already known this, but again, this really took me by surprise, and it might have been essential in the journey of Carol becoming Captain Marvel. All of this information on her life on Earth, the true nature of the Skrull, her connection to Mar-Vell, and how her commanding officer was taken down by the man who had been her mentor and confidant for as long as she'd known up to that point, comes to light all at once. Her entire worldview is shattered. Her perception of not just the world she knew and the people she knew, but everything she thought she was, is challenged. But what makes Carol a hero is, like her fellow Avengers, rising above her struggle and mistakes and striving to be the best of herself. She could have wallowed in self-doubt after all this, but instead, she gets back up and fights. To accept and right the wrongs put on by the Kree. To rise above past failures and the expectations of people and planets who have only ever seen her as lesser because of what she was. Heck, that kind of determination to rise above the odds and defend others the best you can is how she got her powers when she was protecting Mar-Vell. And the Tesseract. Yeah, the Tesseract gave Carol her powers and is the MacGuffin again, which is cool and manages not to break continuity. What's so triumphant about the climax this time around is Carol fully embracing her powers and defining her own limits. No longer looking for approval, but justice, alongside everyone who accepted her for who and what she was, even before she did. Overall, Captain Marvel was another great origin story for the MCU. I had a blast with this movie. There was a lot of controversy surrounding this movie, and now having seen it, I don't really get it. I'm not gonna go over the controversy of this movie being an agenda movie for whatever group, because that would take way too long for what are supposed to be shorter videos, and frankly, I don't really care. I'm more interested in how this movie holds up as a whole and as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think this holds up the MCU's exceptional track record. The action is fun and both the grounded and spectacular. The production design probably stands out the least of the Marvel movies in space, but isn't bad by any means. The connections to the rest of the MCU continue to be solid and fascinating, making the world stronger and more personal, and the characters and themes shine. I kinda get where some critics are coming from when they say there should have been more to the reveal of the Kree's true intentions and how it reflects on Carol's self-identity, but I can't honestly say I felt the same way. I like the idea of someone without memories trying to come to terms with their past and figuring out how that should define their present, but I so rarely see it done well. Here, for me, it was done well. It's the aspect I enjoyed the most about Captain Marvel, and I could probably keep going on about. It reminded me a lot of Phase 1 of the cinematic universe, with less grand set pieces and more grounded environments, longer spaces between action sequences to let the events breathe and be contemplated on, paying tribute to what came before while leaving the door open for new opportunities that will continue to help the MCU thrive. I admit there could have been a bit more, but this is without a doubt a great start. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Prove you're not a Skrull.
That's a photon blast.
And?
A Skrull cannot do that.
I'm just supposed to take your word for that.
Here, educate yourself.